You were live with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with John Beeler. We've got Graham Williams back in the saddle again as well. Been a cool program. We'll be chatting about 5G and how it's important now to get everyone working together. A lot of politics happening in the 5G networking space with Huawei and the US and the UK banning a lot of their network gear. Well, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is a secret lab down in the US that they're using to get all the people that adhere to the 5G standards together to make sure that everything works together. We'll talk about how that's going, when we can see this new technology, and what are some of the cool things that it'll be able to do as well, which I think is the important part. We'll also be talking about Alexa. It's getting smarter and smarter. It's going to start understanding natural language, so you don't have to use the exact words all the time to activate it. And we'll be chatting with Brian Jackson all about that. Let's talk about some of the app news. This one I thought was interesting, guys. Google's reportedly keeping tabs on the usage of rival Android apps to develop competitors. So Google is using a flavor of Android, which is the operating system. It's open source, but they've got a special flavor that they use on Android devices around the world. Obviously, Google makes their own apps like YouTube and Google Maps. So what this story is basically saying is that they're looking at all the other app developers out there to see which ones are the most popular, and then picking those and developing competing ones to that. Thoughts?
So this is actually not a new thing, and it wasn't Google that was the first one to do it. Apple has been doing this for over a decade, and there's actually a term for it. It's called being Sherlocked.
Sherlocked?
Yeah, so you might remember way back when Apple first introduced their search inside the operating system, which was still pretty revolutionary at the time. There was a previous search program that did this. It was called Alfred.
Yeah,
and Alfred actually still exists to this day. But prior to Alfred, there wasn't much of a comprehensive search functionality on Mac OS. They introduced Sherlock, which Steve was very proud to bring to the people, as if it was some revolutionary, new, and wonderful thing. And I think everybody that used Alfred kind of looked around and went, "Beg your pardon?" Especially the people that made it. So it's not unusual for operating system manufacturers to take a look at the things that do well on their operating systems and then bring those features in. And we've seen, Google and Apple basically take a look at things like the jailbreak community or the hack and the tweak community and say, that looks like a cool thing. Let's go make one of those. So this, not unusual at all. John?
Yeah, I think you're totally on point there, Graham. It's basically market research, but it does straddle that line of anti-competitive nature because presumably Google and Apple both have insights that the average developer would not have as far as what those things are that are popular, that are well used, and maybe even how they're used without knowing what kind of analytics those particular companies would have from the operating system feedback side of things.
In a lot of cases, Apple started to do the right thing, and when they actually see a feature that they want, they actually just go out and buy the company. And typically for what Apple considers to be pocket change nowadays, but is a massive windfall for independent software developers. There was actually some folks here in Vancouver that were working on a file transport protocol for MobileMe that ended up being pulled into the iCloud team. So this is something that, these things are out there, and software developers are either hoping that their software does extremely well, or in some cases, they're really looking for the acquisition.
It's tough though. Like if you're an app developer, I mean, you're going up against like Apple, or in this case, Google. And, from what I've read about this story, Google employees can actually go in through something called the Android lockbox and actually see the data of how these apps are being used and how often they're opened. It kind of gives them an edge, don't you think?
It does. I mean, Apple, I think, has been a little bit better about this, and they have respected the intellectual property of their users a little bit more. But Google, inherently, this is what they do. They dig into things, they find out things about things, and they use that to make money. We shouldn't be shocked by this one.
We're going to have to take a break here on the App Show. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a secret lab that Hewlett-Packard has that basically tests all the 5G equipment out there to make sure that it all works together. And we'll be talking about some of the things that we can expect to see over the next couple of years with this new technology. And later on, Alexa, is it getting too smart? We'll find out. You're listening to the App Show here on the Chorus Radio Network. Back after this. You are back with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with John Beeler. We've been talking a lot about 5G over the past year and all the exciting advancements that are coming and the things we're going to be able to do. A lot of politics happening as well in this space. We've seen a lot of things happening with Huawei in a number of countries, but 5G is blazing ahead. To talk about 5G in general and how it all works and how all these companies bring all these technologies together, we've got a great guest with us today. His name is Jeff Edlund. He is with HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise. He's the Chief Technology Officer there of the Communications, Media, and Solutions organization within HPE Enterprise Services. Thanks for joining us today, Jeff.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
First of all, 5G, it causes COVID, right?
Well, I think despite some conspiracy theories, no, in fact, it neither caused it nor is it propagating it.
I'm just joking there. Jeff, Hewlett Packard, and some listeners might not know this, but back a number of years ago, Hewlett Packard did split into two different companies. There's kind of the consumer side with laptops, computers, and things like that. And they also split off to the HP Enterprise side, which is kind of the server side, dealing with smart city stuff, 5G, and what have you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the Communications and Media Solutions business, which we're a software business that specifically addresses the needs of the carriers, the operators, the service providers, we became part of HP Enterprise.
So I just want to kind of lay the foundation here. And, I think some people might be concerned when they've been reading all the news happening right now with 5G network technology and all the different countries taking different stances. 5G in general, and what I think you guys are trying to do, and maybe you can explain this, is kind of an open standard. And you're creating, a platform, a lab where different companies can get together to test these different technologies out to make sure that they all do work together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been a provider to the service providers, for the better part of 20 years. And when the 5G standards and specifications started to get designed, it was very intentionally driven primarily by the operators versus the vendors. And it was very much a cloud design, leveraging IT principles. And it really requires a clean sheet approach. You can't take things that you did in the past and, move them forward to the 5G network and expect them to perform and behave properly. You really need to start from the ground up. Another thing that I would say on this is that as the standards and specifications were written, it was very clear that they were done in a way such they were open. So you did not have to acquire a completely vertically integrated stack from one provider. You could actually mix and match components, and you could come up with a best-of-breed solution that would work for you and your business. And so that's what HPE has really been in the middle of, is promoting to the industry that not only are multi-vendor open 5G solutions possible to assemble, they're actually supportable, and they will actually provide the benefits that everybody's talking about for 5G for the entire industry.
I think for many people, and even myself, it's very complicated, all the different components that have to get together to make all of this technology work. I mean, how many different companies are you working with to make this all happen?
Well, we're working with about half a dozen companies. And so you would see people who we call platform providers like Red Hat, infrastructure providers like Intel. You would see more specialized network function or NF providers like Affirmed and OpenNet, Casa Systems. You would see larger partners like a Samsung as well that are all coming together and making sure that our kit interoperates properly with each other and is supportable before we deliver solutions to the customers.
How far out do you think we are before we're actually starting to see some real world use of 5G technology and the stuff that it can do?
Yeah, great question. So, you're seeing the network, when I say the network, the RAN, appear today. And you have operators around the world that are actually implementing something called 5G non-standalone. That gives you a very fast, connection compared to what you were able to have before. The issue with that, though, is all of these wonderful services that we've envisioned are really not possible yet. That will come with 5G standalone, where you've got a 5G core in the back end that can light up all of these interesting services for you. We have customers that are engaging with us right now. They're putting together commercial agreements with us right now. And they're looking for us to start delivering the 5G standalone core components sometime early next year. So I would see, we'll see a pretty significant uptick in what's possible come early next year.
How has the pandemic affected your rollout plans, or at least your coordination with other companies? I imagine that's probably been pretty challenging worldwide.
Yeah, good question. It's really been interesting, and I would say it's been mixed in a surprising way. We have seen some of the CSPs and frankly some of the suppliers and vendors really draw back and take a conservative approach, really conserve their capital. And frankly, there's been some scarcity of the components that people are looking for. On the complete other side of it, we've seen some of the larger players take this time as an opportunity to really push down on the accelerator and go really fast. And I think they're doing that for a number of reasons. One, they could get some interesting terms that they couldn't have gotten in a non-COVID era from some of the vendor community. Also, they saw, as they started making commitments to the world in order to maintain connectivity, expand connectivity, everything else, that they really needed to scale their network. And so, it's been a curse and a blessing. We've had to do a lot more virtually. We've had to manage the scarcity of some resource. But, all in all, we're figuring it out. I think that's one of the most amazing things.
I think that's definitely something the pandemic has proven, is that people will find a way.
Yeah, exactly. An example I like to use, so one of the hats I get to wear is I run software engineering in the Americas region. And everybody always told me that you couldn't do Scrum and you couldn't do a stand-up meeting if you had your resources dispersed. Everybody needed to be in the same room to do that. Well, guess what? We figured out how to do it. And not only that, we've seen the velocity increase. So we're actually producing quality code even faster than we were before.
Amazing. When we're talking about 5G, just for the listeners out there, they hear it all the time, 5G, and mostly because of the politics that it's associated with. We're starting to see some of the carriers in the US and Canada, they're rolling out 5G networks in the major city centers. And I think most people will get that, yes, my cell phone will be faster, I can connect to more things, but can you give us kind of a sample of some of the other 5G services, technologies that we can look forward to over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I'm going to get really super practical on you. And so there's a lot of these really fancy envisioned things like, let's take autonomous driving, for example, and how the low latency network is going to enable that. And I think all of that's going to come. But what I think is going to happen next year is you'll start to see something which I'm calling a gig economy emerge. And what I'm anticipating is going to happen is because people will have much more connectivity, They'll have connectivity in a lot of places that they didn't used to have connectivity, and it'll be a lot faster than it used to be. You'll see more people that lost jobs during this COVID period suddenly become kind of a gig person, where they'll take different opportunities with different employers, different consulting gigs, all the time, and they'll work from where they're at, whether it's at home or they're up in the mountains or wherever. I think that this is one of the things you'll see emerge really quick. And then to follow on that, I fundamentally believe we'll start to see professionals that had business relationships or employment relationships with large enterprises, like in the healthcare industry. Generally, you'll have a surgeon that works for a provider network. I think that you'll actually see that, surgeons will start to expand their reach. You'll have consultation that goes remotely. You'll have robotic surgery that's possible across many different health systems. You'll have the ability of that surgeon to broaden the base of the employers that they work for and the customers that they serve. Then I think you'll start to see all of these other really fancy things that everybody are talking about start to come on after that. But I'm kind of practical. I think we'll see the nature of the way work is done change first.
We're talking with Jeff Edlund. He is the Chief Technology Officer over at the Communications, Media, and Solutions Organization within Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Services, and talking about 5G. We're going to have to take a break and then move on to some other subjects. But Jeff, if you could hold on, we're going to do kind of a bonus segment for our video podcast viewers that will be available up on our website. You're listening to the App Show here on the Chorus Radio Network. And if you want to see and hear more of our 5G talk and just even talking about some of the politics of it, go to getconnectedmedia.com. We'll have it posted up there. Back after this. You're listening to the video podcast bonus section here. We've got Jeff Edlund with us from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Jeff, how much of the politics has affected what you guys are doing, if any at all?
It's had a huge impact. So we've been very engaged through our corporate affairs with U.S. government, as well as we've been highly engaged with European governments and the World Economic Forum. One of the things that's been most interesting to me is all of these government entities and agencies, they're worried about the bad actors that there are in the world, and they want to secure their networks. But all of them start, and they have a tendency to fixate on one problem, and that's the RAN. And so you see lots of ORAN support, ORAN policy groups being formed, which that's a really good thing, and we believe and we stand behind that. Our role at HPE CMS has been to talk to legislators and get language into bills such that the RAN isn't the only thing that people pay attention to, particularly from a government perspective and a cybersecurity perspective. So we educate that there's this whole core network on the backside that connects to the RAN, and you really need to secure that as well, and you need to have policy associated with that equally to the RAN.
So it's kind of interesting. What you're saying is, one aspect of your world is obviously the technology and making all that work together, but there are a lot of politics involved when it comes to governments and standards with these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been to Washington to deliver this message. I've talked to a number of senators and staffers, and it's really interesting how involved government is. I didn't realize I would have to get this involved, and I didn't realize I'd actually be writing language that goes into bills.
But do they understand what you're talking about, though?
It depends. So I think that I'm much less of a chief technology officer than I am a chief translations officer.
Yeah.
So, when I go in and talk to legislators, I start with the big pictures and stories that they can relate to, and then I allow them to drag me into the deep water if they're technical and they want to know at a deeper level.
I think one of the challenges with any kinds of technology like this, that it's not just a simple bullet point talking session. It's much more complex than just it's the 5G, right? It's there's a lot more to it, a lot more moving parts, like you described earlier. There's just so much going on, and it's not just one thing that is the problem that needs to be addressed. It's multiple things across all kinds of different providers, all kinds of different countries, and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a good example of this was when we were seeing some versions of the first Warner Burr bill that was talking about rip and replace to get Chinese equipment out of U.S. They defined everything as equipment, and they didn't talk about things from a perspective of software that could be running the network. They didn't talk about the services to actually do that rip and replace. They didn't talk about support mechanisms, and it didn't talk about supplying or securing the supply chain end to end. So where does this stuff come from? So that's a role we've been able to play, is to go in and say, yeah, you're right, and we additionally think that this other stuff is important.
It's an interesting thing that I'm looking at this. We've talked a lot with the like the Huawei folks. It's hard not to say their name because they're at the center of all of this. But is there a way, like, for the future, like to create, when you have these open standards, are they able to really game the system in any way or put in backdoors when they have to adhere to all these industry standards?
Great question. So I am not the authority on backdoors, so I can't claim one way or another if they're actually doing that. One of the things that I can tell you that I've seen that puts many of us at a disadvantage is in standards communities. So, and many times the standard communities, they make decisions based upon a vote, and organizations get a number of votes associated with either the number of members that they sent to a meeting or the amount of economic turnover for the company. And so it's not necessarily equally distributed. And, I'll see, like, at a particular standards body, HPE will send a couple of people, and 40 people from one of the Chinese vendors like Huawei or ZTE or somebody else will come and be there. And so they end up having a voice that's louder than some of the other voices that would be in the room.
Because they've got 40 people, you've got 2.
Exactly.
For example. So I guess they really are voting along like their own self-interest, these different companies.
Well, and so
I think we're all altruistic, but at the end of the day, they're a company and they're trying to survive.
Sure, absolutely. And I mean, we're all that way, right? So we participate in standards not only to make sure that we're building things that comply and adhere so we can compete for business with a carrier. We're also present at standards to represent a point of view. Particularly where we have a strong view. For instance, in Etsy, we sponsored and we wrote something called Udicom. And it's a very simple interface that goes from the 4G subscriber data, the 5G subscriber data, and it allows services like a text from a 4G phone to actually appear on a 5G phone. That never would have happened if.
But you just think you just think that's going to work, right?
Well,
all the crazy stuff in the background to make that just a simple text.
Yeah, exactly. And so, us being in that subscriber data management space, we're experts there. We're, raising our hand going, hey, there's some things that aren't going to work unless we do this. So, all vendors are like that. We have the things that we care strongly about.
So you've got this, 5G lab going, trying to get everyone together. What's the biggest challenges you're having?
The biggest challenge at the lab really is meeting all of the demand. We've got, partners, we've got customers. We've got new application service providers that we never even knew of that all want to get here and try their thing out or show their thing. Then the second largest challenge I would say that we have is creating the right level of collaboration while keeping some firewalls in between people. So you could have 2 vendors or 3 vendors that all bring, say, an AMF and an SMF solution. How do you get them in the lab? How do you get them to test for interoperability with each other, but keep them enough away from each other so that they're both confident that their intellectual property is protected?
So when you say this HP lab, is this like a secret underground place? It's all white with scientists in white lab coats running around?
So it's a very modern data center. It's located in Fort Collins, Colorado, and it is a HPE data center that's secured by our cybersecurity department. So there's not a lot of freedom of access movement in and out of it. You need to have appropriate security clearances. And really everything is handled from a remote access, kind of a lights out perspective, unless something physically breaks and someone needs to lay hands on things. Outside of that, what we do is we make sure that people have access through a VPN, that they only have access to a particular region, that we do lab to lab testing where they keep their source code to themselves and just bring an executable or an object in, and so it's not super double secret, but we don't have a sign on the outside that says, hey, this is the HPE 5G
But Jeff,
lab.
Is it underground?
It is not underground. It's a building.
I was hoping it'd be underneath a volcano.
And like a giant laser they're building in.
Yeah.
How long have you been with Hewlett Packard?
So I've been with them since '93.
Okay.
So quite a while.
Yeah. That's forever in the technology space.
Well, yeah, I kind of feel like I've been there forever, though. So I started my career with Digital Equipment.
Yeah.
And then I left them and I went to Tandem. And then Tandem got acquired by Compaq. And then Compaq acquired Digital. And then HP acquired, the whole lot.
Yeah.
So it just feels like I only changed my chair once, but I've changed companies 4 times.
Very cool. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on the program today.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure, Mike. Good to meet you and know you, John. Good to know you as well.
That was Jeff Edlund, one of the CTOs over at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and you've been listening to the bonus section of the video podcast. We're back with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with John Beeler. We're going to talk about Alexa now. Some people love Alexa. Some people hate her. But one thing's for sure, she's not going anywhere, and she's only getting smarter. To help us understand how, we've got our tech expert. His name is Brian Jackson. He's the research director in the CIO practice at Infotech Research Group, the world's fastest growing information technology research and advisory firm. Brian, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
I have to say I've got Alexa all over my house. I like it. Some members of my family do not. So sometimes I'm low in the polls, but it can do some fantastic things, and it is only getting smarter. Recently, there was the Alexa Developers Conference, and you were able to check in on that. And there's some kind of interesting and cool stuff that it's going to be able to do. What's the kind of the underlying message here from this conference?
Yeah, so the underlying message is really that Alexa and Amazon wants to work with developers, and it wants to make Alexa better by partnering with all sorts of digital services that you'll be able to interact with through Alexa. And it plans to continue to put Alexa into all sorts of different household appliances and pieces of furniture and doodads and gadgets. Just like we know now, we've already seen a lot of Alexa in microwaves, stoves, dishwashers. I mean, basically you name it, you can buy it with Alexa, but that's just going to be a trend that continues as we move into a manufacturing world where more things are manufactured with connected features than not.
Question for you before we get into some of the new stuff they announced. Back and even now, I guess there's kind of a couple competing ecosystems now. There's Amazon with Alexa, and there's Google with their Google Assistant and their Google Home environment. Do you think Amazon is ahead of Google now? Like, they just seem to have so many more skills, things that their devices can do.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think Amazon is ahead of Google, especially when it comes to working with developers in the voice first space. It's a much more mature relationship. They have a developer portal that you can log into. Google doesn't really have that sort of rich experience. A lot of the ways that we can work with Google's Actions API for its assistant interactions are a bit more vague, right? With Alexa, there's some developer kits that you can get on wheels. You can make interactions with Alexa without even knowing how to code. All you need is a developer account, and you can log in to create a flash briefing and experiences like that. Very simple interactions to get your podcast onto Alexa. But Google doesn't have that, right? And Amazon, its messaging has just been so much more clear about the fact that it wants to work with developers, and the sort of things that it's providing to them to make Alexa better and make the experience of using skills on Alexa better. It looks pretty good. Like right now, I don't think most people actually talk to Alexa for third-party skills, right? Because the problem is that you have to remember the name of the skill you want to talk to. Like, imagine every time you went to your mobile phone, right? You pull out your iPhone, you're like, oh yeah, I want to use this app. Well, you don't necessarily like have to call it by name to use it, right? You just tap on the icon. You don't have to remember it. You just have to recall it once you see it. So that sort of visual interface makes it so much easier to reach out and use all sorts of different apps. And that's been a big challenge that Alexa and Google Assistant are trying to crack that nut still in figuring out how do we get people using third-party skills, how do we get them interacting with them without having to remember the specific name to say every time.
Yeah, you're right there. I've got a lot of smart home devices, as you can imagine. And sometimes I get a little frustrated because, like you said, I have to remember the exact name and verbiage when I'm saying that skill out loud to get my vacuum cleaner going or turn my fan off, for example.
Yeah. So Alexa, they announced a solution for that, right? At this conference, they announced this feature called name-free interactions. So this is in developer preview right now. So if you're a person that's a developer, you could go on and sign up for this preview and try it out with your skill. But basically what it does is it allows you to program some different catchphrases that people would use when they're thinking about doing the thing that your skill does. So the example they used in the keynote there was with the app called Plan My Trip, which is obviously a trip itinerary planning app, right? Although it's funny they use that example because I don't think people are going many places these days. But let's assume travel returns to us at some point in the future. Instead of having to say, Alexa, talk to Plan My Trip, you'll be able to say, Alexa, I want to plan a trip. Or Alexa, what flights do I have scheduled, right? And then Alexa will be smart enough to say, oh, this guy wants to talk to this app that does that thing, right? So it's getting more conversational in terms of identifying what is this person saying, what are they trying to accomplish, and what are the tools that we have available to actually get that done.
They also talked from the brief thing I read about natural language, being able to understand that as well, which I think is important for any of these kind of digital assistants.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what makes our smart assistants smart, right? We're always talking about this artificial intelligence in Alexa. Well, you know what? It's not learning much about you. It's actually not that smart. The only smart thing about Alexa or even Google Assistant right now is that it understands you. So it's able to translate your natural language when you speak English or whatever language you happen to speak to Alexa, it can translate that into a computer command and then return the right input that you're looking for, whether that's a weather report or a song on Spotify, right? So that's been sort of limited so far. Like, it only understands and is able to produce a certain set of responses to a narrow band of things that you would say to it, right? And Amazon says that's going to get better. They say they're making Alexa smarter with this deep neural nets feature. So the idea with artificial intelligence is it works with these neural nets that is set up and goes through different cascades of decision making. So just imagine that it's like a brain that's getting smarter, getting more dense, more connections are being made. And that means that we'll be able to talk to Alexa in a more conversational way. And instead of spelling everything out painfully every time, it'll be able to like remember certain preferences you have, or be able to react to certain conversations that you're having, and more like a person would sort of keep the thread of a conversation going. It'll remember. So let's use an example with ordering a pizza, right? You're talking to, where would you normally order pizza from, Mike?
Let's say Domino's.
Yeah. Okay. Domino's is a good one because they do have a voice skill. So you'd say, Alexa, talk to Domino's, or Alexa, I want to order my favorite pizza, let's say. And then Alexa would remember that you use Domino's and your favorite pizza is, Mike?
Hawaiian
pizza, pro pineapple, controversial.
big time.
I like it. Okay, so it would program that in and would say, okay, are you ready to order? You say, you know what, Brian's over this time, so make sure to put on extra bacon because that's what he likes on pizza, and also make it an extra large because we're going to need a lot of pizza. And Alexa would just make those adjustments to your pizza and order it for you instead of you having to rejig your whole order. So that's the power of this conversational feature that's being added.
We're talking with Brian Jackson all about Alexa getting even smarter, for better or for worse. We're going to have to take a break and move on to some other topics here on the App Show, including the top 5 apps for budgeting during COVID. But Brian, we're going to get you to hang on the line because we're going to do a bonus feature for the video podcast up on our website, talking a little bit more about some of the crazy stuff happening with Alexa, and a bit of back and forth with TikTok and Amazon as well. You're listening to the App Show here on the Chorus Radio Network. Back after this. You still recording, John? Okay, here we go. You're back now with the bonus edition of the video podcast. We've been talking with Brian Jackson over from I always forget the name of the...
Yeah, right. You just introduced me. Infotech Research Group.
Infotech Research Group. You are the CIO over there, and Infotech Research Group, the world's fastest growing information technology.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Brian, we're talking about Alexa and the fun stuff it can do. You talked about the pizzas that it's ordering. Even as I'm talking here, I'm setting off all the Amazon devices in
Mine's
my
on
house.
Yeah, I thought of that one.
Well, you're smarter than I am. Just a moment. Alexa, stop the music. Jeez. That's why some people hate Alexa. And I did it again. So how about getting... Yeah. So how about getting Alexa into all of these devices? I hear they lowered the price down to these modules that manufacturers need.
Yeah. Well, what's amazing to me about this is that Alexa is telling manufacturers that they can get Alexa into their device for a lifetime service, right? For $4 is what it costs to buy this module. So imagine you're a manufacturer that's making appliances for the kitchen, right? And you're thinking, well, do I want to integrate Alexa or not? I mean, basically, it just seems dumb to not do it, right? For $4 a module, you can just have that feature in case your customers are looking for that. And it creates differentiation from other products, right? Because people might be buying things that they can control with their voice. And Amazon, they won't charge you for the cloud usage that's associated with talking to Alexa. You won't have to worry about any sort of like updates or service because it's all done on the cloud, right? So there's nothing local happening on that module other than providing that connection to Alexa and being able to work with it and know that the device is being referenced by it.
Is that module, is it just like a processor, or is it an integrated microphone and speaker, or what's the, do you know this?
Yeah, it's more like a processor. It's not a microphone and speaker, right? So it's not like saying that this is the module that allows people to talk to your device as Alexa, like access Alexa. It just makes it compatible with Alexa.
Right, yeah. They'd still have to integrate a speaker, maybe a display, and a microphone in whatever.
If you want that, right? If I'm making a dishwasher, I might not want it to talk to you or listen to you. I might just want it to work with the Echo unit that's already in your house, right? And then I wouldn't need to integrate that other hardware. I would just have the module, and then
basic functions. Turn the dishwasher on off.
Yeah,
essentially.
Right.
But I guess that little module doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything. That's a whole other thing.
That would be a separate unit, right? It doesn't. Yeah, this module so low cost. It's not a Wi-Fi solution for a manufacturer. You'd have to also add that. Obviously, Alexa is not going to be very useful if you have no connectivity.
But a system on a chip with Wi-Fi is like 25 cents at volume, so it should be fairly inexpensive. Yeah,
just more crap to go wrong with my dishwasher.
Yeah,
essentially. Hey, we talked about the cloud. I mean, all these commands are theoretically going up to the cloud. It's getting smarter, knowing us. We talked about the pizza example, and it's going to know that I like Hawaiian. It knows when you come over that we need to get an extra large and that you like bacon as well. That information is all being stored in their cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should we be concerned about that?
Yeah. Well, is it being stored on Amazon's cloud? Bacon? Actually, it could be stored. So it might be, right? So now you're talking about it. In the example we used before there, it was with Dominos, right? So the preferences that you're storing are probably with your Dominos account, right? So Dominos, they might use Amazon storage solutions and Amazon cloud solutions. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, that preference is going to be stored somewhere on a server that a company is interacting with, right?
Yeah. I'm wondering how comfortable people are going to be as more and more of us. Like it really is like our preferences and how we feel about things. And it's going that way. Like how comfortable are we going to be that like our profile, like a digital us, is up in the cloud?
It's already there though.
Mm-hmm. It is and it isn't, right? Like, I mean, there's the basic stuff. It's Mike. They know my address, my credit card, but I mean, it's going to go deeper than that.
Yeah, but they know what you're buying, and they know what websites you went to research that purchase before you went to Amazon. Like all that stuff gets aggregated in the cloud, and those profiles are there.
It's too late.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. I hear what you're saying, right? Because it's the more it's able to remember about you and like say, oh, I hear you're coughing. Would you like to order some cough medicine? Like, I remember your favorite brand. Here it is. I am shipping it to you. In fact, it's going to arrive in 2 hours, right? So it's going to be interesting. Like, I think Amazon's mission is to remove as much friction as possible from the consumer experience, right? So remembering more things about the consumer and knowing them helps do that. It helps make for a better user experience from the viewpoint of I don't have to repeat myself. I don't have to remember everything that I want. Something else can do that workload for me. But then when you run up against that other factor of now it's creepy. Now I feel like it knows too much about me. And I think it's going to be different for different people.
The thing too is right now it's relatively passive. Like you have to initiate that conversation for the most part. But I could see it being more active in the future where, like you said, it will participate in your life because it's monitoring things, whether you're running low on something that you might have previously bought, or like you said, you're coughing. Hey, do you want this? And then it's like, whoa, someone's talking to me about my cough. And that could, I think that might be the tipping point, is the passive to active state of Alexa or any smart assistant for that matter.
Right. Although you think about it, it could be potentially powerful and good for us in some ways, right? Because we're not always keeping track of our own health. And it might be interesting if we constantly had like a smart assistant listening to our symptoms. We could be alerted of certain ways that we're getting sick or slipping mentally, feeling stressed. And then to have something outside of you that's telling you that that's going on and here's what you can do about it, it might improve your quality of life. You never know.
I think too, I mean, we've kind of seen this like in Iron Man with Jarvis, for example, the assistant that Tony Stark has in his suit. He's constantly monitoring Tony's health and statistics and all that type of stuff. And I think I agree with you, Brian. I think that's something that is potentially really compelling, especially for a certain group of people that might need more help with that, or maybe aren't able to do that kind of stuff by themselves, and take a more active role in monitoring and addressing those issues. But I guess it's good. At some point, people are going to have to make a decision on whether they're comfortable with granting that level of access to their life.
Yeah, I mean, think about the elderly, right? Often they have to give up a lot of their freedom to go into like assisted living situations. But what if we could facilitate a connection to family members through this sort of technology, or help them remember to take their medication at the right times of day, have sensors that would detect if they're in trouble once they've fallen? It all adds up to a little bit more security in a home they're already comfortable in, right? And then that's actually preventing them from giving up even more of their privacy and dignity, right? So it depends where you're coming from and what the use case is. I think you have to evaluate that. But privacy, I mean, we have to be careful, right? We have to remember that Amazon hasn't always come clean about when Alexa's listening to us and what it's doing with that data.
Let's talk about one of the other things they discussed at the Alexa Developer Conference, Alexa for apps.
Yeah.
And the whole TikTok controversy.
Right. So let's start with that TikTok promo, because that was interesting to me. So the week before this Alexa Developer Conference happened, it was in the news that Amazon emailed its employees and said, delete the TikTok app. It's a security threat. It might be a way that you could be spied on. TikTok or China is going to be stealing our company property through this, right? So then when the media asked Amazon about that a few days later, they said, oh, that email was a mistake, actually. We didn't mean that. So you just sort of thought, like, what? Like, what happened there? Like, why would that email be sent out? Why would Amazon then say it was a mistake? So you're watching this Alexa for apps announcement, and the featured app that's going to use this and debuts it really is TikTok. And they had this whole promo video ready. They had a TikTok influencer on there using the feature, using Alexa to interact, start recording his video for TikTok, which looks actually really great. Like a hands-free way to start recording a video of yourself, I think would be really useful for that. But then you realize that, hey, maybe this was the reason that Amazon reneged on that decision to delete TikTok from all their employees' smartphones. Somebody must have said, hey, we're actually working with TikTok. We have this promo video in the can and it's all slated to go for the Alexa Live announcement. So maybe we shouldn't be telling everybody to delete that app, right?
And by the way, you're fired.
Probably.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for hanging around for the extra bonus section of the video podcast here.
Great. Yeah, it was fun.
Brian Jackson is the research director in the CIO practice at Infotech Research Group, the world's fastest growing information technology research and advisory firm. It's all about the research. Thanks, Brian, again.
Thank you.
You are back with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with John Beeler. Well, with CERB set to run out in September and many unsure about their job with financial stress levels going up really high, it's time to look at some budgeting apps. 63% of Canadians are feeling stressed about paying their bills in this summer, according to Borrowell. There's a number of different apps we can have a look at to maybe help lower that. We've got Barry Choi on the line. He is a personal finance expert. Thanks for joining us, Barry.
Yeah, happy to be here, guys.
Glad to have you on the program here. This is something I'm concerned about as well. I think, there's a lot of uncertainty out there, but you have got a few budgeting apps that we can talk about today. Where do we want to start?
Let's start with Reeby. This is something that I feel like a lot of consumers can take advantage of right away. So Reeby is basically a grocery store app, but more specifically, grocery flyers. So it's a really nice way for you to look at what grocery stores are in your neighborhood, look at the flyers so you can meal plan, price compare, price match. So, a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, my grocery bills are going up, up, up. But here's an opportunity to keep your prices at a reasonable level and, really just plan your meals, stay on budget, because right now it's the small things that count.
Well, I think that's a good point. One of our big expenses, of course, is food. So if you can get food for less, that does add up to considerable savings. Let's go. What's the next app?
You know what? One that's really popular is called You Need a Budget. So unfortunately, a lot of people in Canada, and not just in Canada, they just don't have a budget. They just don't understand how it works. And it should be pretty simple. For me as an expert, it's easy for me to say that. For people who have their finances under control, very easy for them to deal with it. But for a lot of people out there, they just don't know where to start. So You Need a Budget is exactly what it sounds like. They help you create a budget. So, you list your income, you connect your finances to it. That could be your investments, your bank accounts. And the app and / software basically looks at where all your money is going and outputs everything. And what they try to do is assign your money a dollar value. So they want every single one of your dollars to work for you. The only problem with this app that I feel like it's a bit expensive. It costs $11.99. I'm pretty sure that's US dollars per month. But if you pay it once a year, $84 US, and I think that's a much more reasonable price.
Very, very cool. What's the next app you got?
Well, you're talking about the survey results from Borrowell, and this is what I really like about them because they're putting real data that can help Canadians out there. So for those who are unfamiliar with Borrowell, they became a major player on the scene a couple of years ago because they introduced free credit scores for Canadians. And that's very important if you ever want a loan in the future. But they recently introduced a new feature called Boost. And this is interesting because what it does is they look at your monthly expenses and they predict when your bills are going to pay. And according to the Canadian Payroll Association, about 47% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And what Borrowell is really trying to do for Canadians is they want to make sure that you're not missing your bill payments. So they're offering a $75 interest-free loan. And they do this because if you miss just one payment, your credit score could tank. So if you ever want a loan for, say, a car or a mortgage in the future, right, you're not going to get it. But with Borrowell, they'll alert you and they'll tell you, hey, you're running out of money in the bank. You don't want to miss those bill payments.
Yeah, I guess the challenge there, when your credit score goes down, if you do need to borrow money in the future, the interest rates go up. So
that's exactly it, right? If you've got a low credit score, you might not get those favorable rates. You might end up with a high interest rate, and we're talking about higher than credit cards. So the last thing you want is you've gotten laid off right now. CERB is running out, and you know what? Sometimes the bills don't line up with your paychecks, and a lot of, like we said, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and you got to just manage your money a lot better. And that's why we're talking about these apps today, because they all help you in different ways, and when you combine them, they can really put your financial future back in place.
Okay, I think we got a couple more. What's the next one, Barry?
Yeah, Rakuten. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rakuten, but it's like a cash back. And I love cash back. I don't know about you, but I like to earn money when I spend money. So Rakuten is basically, it used to be called ebates.ca. Maybe that's something you're familiar with it. It's very, very simple, right? You shop online through their portal. You go on Rakuten first. Right? You click to one of their partner merchants that could be, say, Sephora, Old Navy, Amazon, Apple. They even have a bunch of travel merchants. And depending on what you're buying from them, you get cash back into your own account. And eventually every quarter you get a payout. So again, it's like, hey, you're spending money anyways. You might as well make some money. And they have an app also. It's basically the same thing as if you go online. You go through the portal, like I said, and an important thing is to go through the portal, because if you don't go through the portal, it doesn't record that you're going through them, so you won't get your cash back.
That's fantastic. Barry, we've got one more. What do you got?
Yeah, so this last app is called Mocha. They used to be called Milo, and they rebranded. And what's interesting about them is they help you save money. It's called Roundups, which became really popular over the last couple of years. So let's just say you buy coffee, costs $1.50. You can have Mocha round up to $2. So that extra 50 cents goes to a savings account, and you can actually decide to multiply that amount. So let's just say you want to, hey, I'm going to do a 4 times multiplier. So instead of saving 50 cents, save $2 from that purchase for me. So it goes into an account, which you can then invest, and Mocha will actually take care of the investing for you because they use different platforms, investment portfolios based on your profile. So it's a good way to save and invest at the same time. And depending on the type of investor profile you have, maybe you're a conservative investor, maybe you're a little bit more aggressive, or maybe you want to invest in things that are meaningful to the environment, that have a real environmental impact on things. And they'll allow you to do that also. So it's, again, one of those apps that allows you to get into investing for the first time, and hopefully you learn from it and you create better saving habits.
Barry, thank you so much for giving these tips.
Anytime.
That was Barry Choi, a personal finance expert. When we come back from the break here on the App Show, we're going to tell you how you can win a Samsung A71 smartphone. Stay tuned. You're back with the App Show. Mike Egerbo here with my good friends John and Graham. I just want to throw to the contest one more time. We are giving away a brilliant Samsung Galaxy A71 smartphone running Android. This thing is beautiful, fantastic screen, great camera, and we are giving one away this month. If you want a chance to win this, super easy. All you have to do is visit our website, getconnectedmedia.com, and hit our newsletter tab. If you do that and enter our newsletter, you're entered to win all of the prizes and contests that we're doing this year. And we're literally giving away thousands of dollars of stuff. And you know what? Our website's actually really cool. We've got all sorts of great tech tips up there, latest gadget reviews, how-to videos, and also our radio and audio podcasts as well. So lots of neat stuff. Again, getconnectedmedia.com. I want to thank everyone that helps put the show together, including my two co-hosts, Graham and John, and of course, Christina, our producer, and the rest of the gang back at the ranch. We'll see you again next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube page. And you know that little bell icon? Hit that and you'll be notified every time we post a new video. And comment. The more comments and the more likes and subscriptions we get, the more videos we can make.